old mum has been dead almost 15 years, and yet people still accuse me of getting where I am through nepotism. To which it took me 20 years to come up with a response, which is, my next brilliant thing is the magazine.
Oh, okay.
Now, this might make me sound
talking blueies or?
Well, all. Look, we could get into that. I'm not going to pretend there is a bit of nostalgia for that as well. But before we get to that,
Sure.
It's interesting to see where your mind went, Russell.
Well, we're of a similar age. I imagine we found those magazines in
Hedges.
Yeah.
Why were they in Hedges? Did you see the story recently that the Japanese used to have these boxes? These sort of modesty boxes into which you could post your pornography.
Yes,
and they've withdrawn them because who's got pornography to post?
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about the magazine in general.
Sure.
Obviously, I have an online life.
Let's get to that.
I have written for the Guardian Observer for, blimey, 29 years on contract, and now I moved to the FT, and they have online presences. But the magazine as an object is so brilliantly tactile, the way, the gallery of them. And, you know, when I first started out as a freelance journalist, I was writing for a Rayner, which was the sister mag to The Face, for GQ. And I was a sex columnist on Cosmopolitan back in my 20s, which was, you know...
What was the interview like for that?
Well, it was more that I pitched a piece to them, and then they said, "Have you got any more like this?" So
okay.
Yeah. Well, how about why men are jealous of women's orgasms, or you know, there was always something.
Yeah.
And they gave me a contract. But the thrill of opening a magazine, you can sniff a magazine. Mm-hmm. There's a particular smell to that print, and then opening it page by page, and the gallery effect of that. I love online. I live a very vivid online life, but you don't get it. You only get it with a magazine. And what's really quite thrilling to me is that magazines are still thriving. And that thing for me of a piece of my work turns up in a beautifully designed magazine, it feels better, more important than if it's just there online.
Yeah, it's just tangible, isn't it? And it also used to be that thing of, I think back to like Shoot magazine, to talk about football again. When that came out, you had to wait for the week, and then you got the new one, and then you kind of opened it, and you know, it's the.
Do you ever get into When Saturday Comes as well, which was the great football fanzine from the mid '80s?
No.
That was one of those grassroots mags, because you know, in those days, I suppose online enables anybody to do this, but before the web came along, the fanzine was a way of making your mark.
Yeah.
And a lot of people emerged out of magazines like that into mainstream journalism.
But also, as the consumer of that, it was the wait. And it was like, right, comes out on a Wednesday, comes out on a Thursday, and you're kind of like, you know, you were kind of, we now live in a world where, give me it, I want to binge it, I want it all. You can click on one link. YouTube's a really good example that you could sort of, you know, you could see a clip of Billy Connolly and then another clip, but it used to be that thing that one of your mates would get hold of it, and then you would all.
Well, there's a bigger question, interesting debate about the way the streamers have recognised this, and increasingly with their big showpiece dramas, are not dropping the whole thing at once. You have to pick them up week by week.
Yeah,
which is a way of just improving, you know, retention and stickiness.
Yeah,
to talk of bags of the kind you were.
Well, but do you? Was there a magazine that you kind of, you know, like a favourite magazine that you still read?
I will take Private Eye off the newsstands every single other Wednesday.
Yeah.
Partly to find out which one of my colleagues has screwed up brilliantly, or which the management of which newspaper is. I mean, it's proper journalism and it's good. And I love the fact that despite all the things they could do with print and typography, it still looks like it's been put together with a John Ball printing set.
Yeah.
But it's that you're holding the object in your hand, you do not know what you're going to find inside.
Sure. It was like Viz magazine was huge for me when I was a kid. Like,
I had an amazing honour a couple of back in December.
Yeah. Which
was they've got a strip called Foodie Bollocks.
Yes.
And I featured.
Oh, terrific.
I know.
Yeah. So with the new, you know, have you written an article for the Financial Times yet? Or?
Well, as we sit here talking, I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first two I have written I think by the time this is revealed to your audience, the first one will have appeared.
Okay, and so you've yet to see it in the magazine.
I've yet to see anything of mine in the Financial Times. The funny thing is, I always, as a freelance, people know me as a restaurant critic, but I've written about almost everything apart from sport in my time. Although I did once cover the all amateur natural bodybuilding championships. Yeah, so that's my.
How did you get?
It was a good story,
No, sure, I get that.
You know these people who are not juiced up, gathering in a ballroom at the Queen's Hotel Leeds so they can flex their pecs.
Yeah.
And I followed one guy from his training sessions in Chalk Farm all the way to Leeds, where he went out on the lash the night before and absolutely screwed it up. He was.
Have you always had that kind of curiosity?
There are many things that I do, but I am at heart a reporter, a hack, a journalist, whatever you want to call it. And I always have been. I went to Leeds University because it had the biggest student paper in the country.
Right.
With the plan to become the editor, which was a full-time job to which you had to be elected. Partly, I'd gone for that thinking, because my mother was such a well-known journalist, that people would accuse me of getting into journalism through nepotism. And if I could get elected by a bunch of cynical students, nobody would ever accuse me of getting where I am through nepotism. I did get elected to be student editor. I was the editor for the first year. It has made absolutely no difference. My old mum has been dead almost 15 years, and yet people still accuse me of getting where I am through nepotism. To which it took me 20 years to come up with a response, which is, why having a mother who was an expert in premature ejaculation should get me a job on MasterChef, I do not know.
It's a great title for a book,
isn't it? It's a bit wordy. I've always been a reporter.
Yeah.
There is always a notebook in my back pocket. And I like asking. One of the brilliant things about being a journalist is you get to ask people indiscreet questions. It's a license to be nosy.
So when you were doing sex columns for
the Cosmopolitan.
I
mean, the funny thing was, I'd been with the same woman already by that point for about, my wife, for about 3 or 4 years, and there wasn't a lot of action before then. So that did require me to be a reporter and call my friends and say, so what?
Yeah.
And, we're in our 20s and comparing notes.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because had you not been with your kind of girlfriend, wife, the pressure you'd be under if you were kind of...
Well,
as soon as you're writing a column...
Immersive journalism, Russell.
Yeah.
But there is more than enough of those around.
But you create this sort of... The idea that you're an expert in something like that, that would have... I remember asking Craig David, because he was single, and he must have met a girl on the Sunday. Do you know what I mean? And then he's sort of stuck in this awkward thing of then, do you want to have a drink tomorrow? And it follows him around. And I get that's what I was going to ask, but I guess if you're with your missus, it's kind of like it's just a bit of work, isn't it?
It was a bit of work, but well, I was writing whimsy, is what I was doing. Can I shape 1,100 words, 1,200 words with a fluent argument all the way through? The terrible thing is, I remember what the first one was about, which was an incident that happened on a bus in Turkey where a much older woman had felt me up, and had that been sexual harassment or had I actually enjoyed it? And yes, I had.
Of course.
And it was all about power play and gender and all of that stuff. And then they said, we've got more.
This ticket inspector's thorough, like that.
And then the second story. Well, how about this? I can't remember what the rest of them were, but I wrote about 15 of them. They used to get translated. I'd get a call from a nice woman, a very posh woman at National Magazine, to say, we've had a request to reprint your article, Why Men Are Jealous of Women's Orgasms, from South African Cosmopolitan. They are offering X fee. And I go, yeah, sure, all right. Constant. I was all over the world with this stuff.
That's so interesting.
Germany eventually started commissioning originals from me because when they approached me and said, would you write this piece for us? And I said, you're now a nation of 100 million people, 50 million men. Have you not got one who could do this in German original? Went, no, it is very sad, but we do not. But we have a very good translator. I went, okay, fine.
Yeah,
they paid well.
But they're a fascinating bunch, the Germans. Like they have a really interesting relationship to kind of nudity compared to.
You go to Munich, the Englischer Garten, which is the equivalent of Hyde Park, has a nudist area right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like if you went into Hyde Park and there's a whole bunch of, not everybody wants to see a whole bunch of British people, lying naked in the middle of a field. We don't want to get there.
Is it screened?
No.
No. Well, that's what I mean. It's just that, like, it's just a very different relationship.
Yeah, and probably a healthier one.
Yeah. But I was in a sauna and just had a pair of shorts on. Basically got told off by an old lady.
Let's take your shots off.
Yeah, essentially, but because I looked German, she started speaking to me in German, and I kind of took them off and apologised. Very weird feeling of and I sort of put on a German accent.
Did you like it really, Russ?
I kind of went sorry, put on this sort of strange sort of German Sean Connery impression.